Blake and Ryan and her mother decided to attend the Time 100 Gala. There they are. Look.
Oh my God, I can't believe Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds showed up at the Time 100 Gala last night in New York, pretending like nothing. Of the two of them posing on the red carpet has been everywhere today, and they look so happy and so relaxed.
There they are. Look, I gotta be honest, they are trying so hard. All these photos are just so ridiculous. Look at the gown. This photo really took the cake for me. All a PR stunt. I'm like uncomfortable. I'm visibly uncomfortable watching them sort of force themselves to revenge. This was a good idea. I kid you not. This is, again, one of the dumbest PR moves. Just a woman who is in denial, attempting to gaslight the entire world who is witnessing what's actually happening.
There's a lot of controversy right now with Blake being on the Time 100 list.
It's a ridiculous joke. She shouldn't be there. She has no influence over anything.
Blake Lively made one of the most embarrassing red carpet walks when she showed up to the Time 100 Gala dressed in couture and surrounded by controversy and a PR nightmare. Blake tried to convince the world she was more than just a Hollywood actress. She wanted to be seen as a survivor and a civil rights icon, but the internet replied with a wave of backlash so intense that it exposed the cracks in her entire public image. And as her husband Ryan Reynolds stood by, the facade of Hollywood's golden couple began to crumble. From awkward body language to viral meltdowns, nothing went according to script. But this wasn't just bad PR, this was a full-blown implosion. The moment Blake Lively stepped onto the Time 100 red carpet, it was clear this wasn't going to be a celebration, it was going to be a spectacle. Draped in a jaw-dropping designer gown with her mother by her side, Blake was staging a narrative. Cameras flashed, handlers hovered, and yet the air felt heavy with something far less glamorous. She came armed with a story about her mother's trauma. What was supposed to be a moment of empowerment quickly devolved into a carefully orchestrated plea for sympathy. When Blake took the stage, she warned the audience she'd be discussing difficult subjects. What followed wasn't a tribute to survivors, it was a vague, emotionally manipulative performance that left the crowd feeling uneasy.
So Blake Lively had this speech, someone recorded it and put it online. She talked about how her mother was almost killed by a co-worker before she was born, and then her mother heard on the radio another woman talking about how she survived abuse. And of course, as always, there was so much word salad in this speech. The story didn't make any sense to me.
In a time where the most valuable currency seems to be anger, it feels like an act of defiance to commune and celebrate all the good that is alive in the world. And the many here tonight who either challenge the system and or show us the magic exists on Earth. I can't make sense of this at all. I'm honestly shocked.
I have so much to say about the last 2 years of my life, but tonight is not the forum.
So, does that mean she's going to do an Oprah interview? Oh my God, bring it on!
What I will speak to separately is the feeling of being a woman who has a voice today. My life was influenced most by my mother, sitting here tonight, Willie Elaine McAlpin.
Oh, Blake's mother!
At her urging and her unwavering bravery, she wanted me to share with you that she is a survivor of the worst crime someone can commit against a woman. The woman painfully and graphically shared how she escaped. And because of hearing that woman speak to her experience instead of shutting down in fear and unfair shame, my mom is alive today. We name it, we change it. Just as our fellow Time 100 honoree, the incredible Giselle Pellicot, put it to every woman who understood, it's not for us to have shame. It's for them.
She spoke of unspeakable violence, but with a tone that felt oddly self-congratulatory. Her mother's story became a prop, not a testimony. Blake delivered a shallow monologue wrapped in polished buzzwords. There were no concrete details, no call to action, just dramatic pauses, misty eyes, and a round of claps from a room full of people unsure how to respond. Even worse, Time magazine positioned her alongside trailblazers like Serena Williams and Simone Biles, women who had actually fought battles of race, gender, and visibility in the public eye. In contrast, Blake's legacy includes a plantation wedding, racially insensitive ads, and now an awkward attempt to rebrand as an activist. Critics didn't waste time calling it a performative, tone-deaf scheme. Even Megyn Kelly called the speech a disgusting misuse of personal pain for attention.
Whatsoever, and I feel like Blake Lively is just desperate to look like a victim. and now she's using her mom to make her look more like a victim. All of us have stories. All of us have mothers with stories, and I feel this was just a PR stunt. If her mother, if this is true, because Blake Lively has told a lot of story previously, as we've all found out, that hasn't always been like factually correct. I didn't quite understand how her mother was saved by a person she heard on the radio. If it saved her that she could get away physically from this man who tried to harm her. Oh, I am a victim. And then she's trying to relate to everyone else who's a victim and say that as women, we stand together. No, we don't stand with you. And this is just another attempt to win over the public. Really, the Titan Blake Lively is now trying to convince us that she is a victim because her mother was. Blake Lively brought her mother with her because she was using her story to tell a powerful story about abuse and women and blah blah.
Thanks, Mom, for giving me your moment so I can look like a victim through you. This is like when Amber took her assistant's story.
While Blake was basking in the spotlight of her own performance, Ryan Reynolds looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. Gone was the charming Ryan, but instead, a man visibly unraveling under the weight of a PR circus he clearly didn't sign up for.
Ryan looks terrified. Like, Ryan genuinely stuck between these women. All a PR stunt.
But there was nothing uncomfortable about Blake Lively posing on the red carpet.
The tension was in high definition. From the second they hit the red carpet, Ryan's posture was stiff, his eyes distant, and his expression unreadable, until it wasn't. When he abruptly flung Blake's massive dress train out of the way to keep himself from tripping, it was symbolic. The protective, doting husband act was done, and self-preservation had taken its place. These cracks deepened the very next day at the Time 100 Creative Summit, where Ryan was expected to deliver an inspirational talk. Instead, he stumbled through a rambling, disconnected monologue about identity, avoiding any mention of his wife or the whirlwind she'd kicked up.
And I'll be honest, it does feel odd. It feels forced where he's out there being presented as, oh yeah, we got to put you out there. We got to be the man of the people. Everyone loves Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool. But there's just something missing. It feels awkward. You can also see he's nervous. He feels very nervous. Is he going to get asked a question? At some of these softball places like Time, they clearly aren't.
Issues there, and I don't know why Ryan Reynolds was doing this speech yesterday that I also talked about. He was interviewed on stage. He was asked questions that he didn't answer, and he was sitting like, when you look at his body language in that interview, he's sitting like this scared little child in that chair. I don't know if he did that on purpose to look more like a victim, or if he just felt really uncomfortable sitting there.
He wasn't charming or witty, he was uncomfortable. He twitched in his seat, laughed at his own jokes that didn't land, and made it painfully clear he had no idea what he was doing there. Online lip readers even claimed they caught him muttering a profanity under his breath. It felt like watching someone held hostage by their own image, desperately trying to keep it together as the world around him crumbled. For years, Ryan had been the grinning bystander between Blake and public scrutiny, but at the Time 100 events, the people saw that he no longer had the face of a supportive partner. It was the look of a man who realized that the empire he helped build was burning from the inside out, and Hollywood insiders were already sharpening their knives. The whispers started before the gala ended, saying that Blake Lively's so-called redemption arc was officially dead. Her desperate bid to rebrand herself as a victim-activist hybrid didn't just fall flat. It reignited every controversy she'd spent years trying to bury. Industry voices began calling her Plantation Barbie again, a brutal callback to her 2012 wedding held on a literal slave plantation. And it wasn't just the internet doing the dragging. It was fellow celebrities, stylists, and publicists who'd had enough. According to reports, even some of the PR professionals hired to spin her story were quietly distancing themselves, unwilling to risk their reputations on her name. Time magazine's decision to position Blake between genuine icons like Serena Williams and Simone Biles was seen as the final insult. One tweet that went viral read, "Serena and Simone earned their spot through legacy. Blake bought hers with a plantation wedding and a Hallmark monologue. The people were insulted." One made the situation even worse was Blake's refusal to acknowledge her past mistakes. There was no apology and no accountability, just another glossy event, vague speech, and an attempt to align herself with causes she barely seemed to understand. Every move she made felt calculated, hollow, and painfully detached from the realities of the struggles she was allegedly supporting, and the entertainment industry responded by quietly closing doors. Industry figures began speaking more openly about how exhausting her performative wokeness had become. Just when it seemed like Blake Lively couldn't make things worse, speculation about a possible pregnancy exploded across social media. Viral TikToks zoomed in on what appeared to be a noticeable baby bump beneath her couture gown, and within hours, users began accusing her of staging yet another calculated distraction. Because back in 2016, Blake found herself under fire for posting a tone-deaf caption referencing Sir Mix-a-Lot's LA face with an Oakland booty, and like clockwork, she followed up with a sudden pregnancy announcement. Now, in 2025, these same plays seem to be unfolding, only this time, the internet wasn't falling for it. The timing was too convenient. The backlash from the Time 100 speech was still reverberating when Blake appeared on the red carpet. Commentators across platforms were quick to point out how she seemed to lean into the attention, placing her hands near her midsection and posing with that practiced, soft smile. Suddenly, the conversation shifted from her crumbling credibility to a potential baby number 4, but instead of softening public opinion, it only made things worse. Critics accused her of using motherhood as a way to deflect from the criticism surrounding her past scandals, and the courtroom drama brewing in the background. The outrage wasn't just about the pregnancy rumors, it was about the manipulation behind them. For a growing number of viewers, Blake had crossed a line. Using deeply personal experiences to craft a victim narrative was one thing, weaponizing motherhood to escape accountability was another. She's not protecting her family, one viral post read, she's using them as props. It echoed the same criticism that plagued her Time 100 speech. If this was meant to be her redemption moment, it had the opposite effect, cementing her image as a star who's always trying to cover up her scandals. As the Time 100 fallout spiraled, an even darker controversy resurfaced that many thought had disappeared.
Yeah.
I'm good.
And what do you think of like her new movie, Another Simple Favor? People are saying she's feuding with Anna. Like, do you believe that? Or?
I couldn't care less, but I do care when people bastardize Me Too allegations. I think she launched a fake Me Too allegation against him, and she's lived to regret doing it because virtually every allegation she has made has fallen apart. And so for her to be honored for doing that, to try to ruin a man over absolutely nothing, is a scandal.
Whispers began circulating that Blake Lively had allegedly weaponized a Me Too-style allegation against a fellow actor after facing personal rejection. The name Justin Baldoni entered with a wave of disturbing claims. According to sources tied to the April 2025 Hollywood circuit, Blake had attempted to cozy up to Justin behind the scenes of a major studio project. When her advances were politely declined, things allegedly took a bizarre turn. Instead of moving on, she supposedly pursued legal action, allegations that insiders have since described as flimsy, exaggerated, and ultimately empty. What might have once been brushed off as industry gossip has now exploded into a full-blown scandal, and the public soon began connecting the dots. Her carefully constructed survivor image suddenly looked more like a deliberate ploy, especially when paired with a lawsuit that insiders claim was filled with inconsistencies. Commentators called it reckless, harmful, and dangerous, especially in a post-Me Too world where real victims already struggle to be heard and believed. Suddenly, Blake was being labeled as someone who actively undermines the very movements she pretends to support. The comparisons to Amber Heard were immediate and unforgiving. Social media lit up with comparisons on how both women had positioned themselves as faces of trauma while being accused of distorting the truth for personal gain. One post read, "When Hollywood princesses fake pain for clout, real survivors pay the price." Even legal commentators, media watchdogs, and advocacy groups began weighing in, questioning how someone still under legal scrutiny could be honored as one of the most influential figures in America.
And another thing is, when you go out like this and you are also honored with being one of the most 100 influential people in the world, that looks terrible for the lawsuit. If she's going to claim in court that she had all these damages and trauma, but she's totally fine going on red carpets.
As Blake's credibility disintegrated under public scrutiny, one of her most high-profile friendships quietly collapsed in the background, Taylor Swift. Once considered inseparable Hollywood besties, Blake and Taylor's bond had been paraded across social media for years. But in 2025, that glossy friendship hit an icy wall. Legal insiders revealed that Taylor had been subpoenaed in connection with Blake's ongoing lawsuit, the same one facing growing scrutiny for allegedly being fabricated, and Taylor's response was a swift and strategic strategic retreat. Not only did Swift's legal team reportedly refuse to cooperate, but Taylor also began actively distancing herself in the public eye. She skipped the Time 100 Gala, ignored mentions of Blake in recent interviews, and even unfollowed several Lively affiliated accounts. It was clear that Taylor wanted no part in the spiraling mess. For someone as meticulously brand conscious as Swift, this kind of separation is purposeful. Fans speculated that Taylor likely saw the signs and knew the association was no longer safe. Her own brand, built around emotional transparency and female empowerment, couldn't risk being tainted by Blake's spiraling controversies, especially not when those controversies involved accusations of fabricated trauma and undermining real survivors. More than just a friendship fallout, Taylor's quiet exit symbolized something much bigger: Blake's rapid isolation. One by one, her allies were dropping off with silence that spoke volumes. Hollywood doesn't need to cancel someone with words when disassociation does the job better. And with Swift's exit, the image Blake once cultivated now stood alone. While Blake faced mounting backlash and isolation, Ryan Reynolds was quietly unraveling in his own way. And it all came to a peak at the Time 100 Creative Summit. Dressed in a wrinkled suit and looking like he hadn't slept in days, Ryan shuffled on stage and delivered one of the most baffling speeches of his career.
The last one I did, I mentioned that the greatest superpower I ever had in my life, I'm not talking about just my career or anything, was knowing who I am. And when you're young and you're in your 20s, you're trying, at least I was, you're trying on personalities like they're shirts. You're literally just, I'll be this person, I'll be that person, and one day you've stolen from 1,000, so you're a genius, not a thief. And
thank you for finally admitting you stole it from a lot of people. A lot of people do, but he did admit it.
Stealing from one, and you've pulled all these different references in and these feelings, and you know yourself. And what I think is, here's how I know. Someone asked me at one of the ones I was leaving, it was the end of the thing, how did you know? And I said, what? He said, how did you know that you knew who you were? That aren't true. They're not what I know to be my story. And it really clicked. And it clicked in every part of my life. And, as someone who skipped rehab in his 20s and decided to go to conflict resolution workshops in Santa Fe, which I both recommend and I do not recommend. So lauding, it's just like, this guy should have a Nobel Prize for blah, 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 blah.
So, I don't mean to interrupt, but I gotta add the commentary. It is also a tell there. He reads everything about him. He's admitting it. You just heard him admit it. So he's clearly watching and reading. We knew this. We assumed this, let's say. But he just confirmed.
Are saying about you. So how has that media attention impacted your brand, your businesses?
Well,
it's a good question. And she didn't ask the elephant in the room, but she kind of did, right? She's like, how does all the negative attention affect your businesses?
Instead of inspiration, the audience got confusion. Ryan rambled about his younger self trying on personalities like shirts and admitted to borrowing traits from other people to figure out who he was. It wasn't self-aware, it was alarming. The speech lacked structure, confidence, and authenticity. Is he okay? Quickly started trending on X as clips of his aimless talk circulated. His usual sharp wit was nowhere to be found, replaced with nervous laughter and vacant stares. There wasn't a single mention of Blake, their family, or the firestorm surrounding them. If anything, it felt like he was trying to pretend it all didn't exist, which only made his avoidance more obvious. The silence spoke volumes. TikTok sleuths dissected every frame, from his stiff posture to his tight-lipped grimace. Some even claimed to lip-read him muttering a frustrated "what the fuck" under his breath during the interview. It didn't help that the Time host accidentally ended up outshining him with more charisma and composure than the man who built a billion-dollar brand on being likable. Even his own business ventures weren't safe. Ryan's Mint Mobile ads, once viral for their humor, suddenly had their comment sections disabled. The backlash spilled into every corner of his public presence. Critics labeled him a PR puppet, a man who built his image on charm and relatability, but revealed nothing when it really mattered. The version of Ryan that emerged wasn't the quirky superhero fans once adored. It was someone lost, uncertain, and drowning in a narrative he no longer controlled. As the dust began to settle, a new theory started circulating that exposed just how calculated the entire Time 100 rollout might have been. According to multiple Hollywood insiders, Blake Lively's inclusion on the Time 100 list wasn't earned. Through influence or activism, it was allegedly brokered through a backdoor deal. The rumor was that Time magazine only agreed to honor Blake if Ryan Reynolds showed up in person to headline their creative summit.
And the question is like, why is he even there at the Time Summit? Was this part of the deal in order to get Blake Lively on the list? Did Leslie Sun say, and we'll give you Ryan for your Creative Summit live in person?
In other words, no Ryan, no list, and the backlash made it clear that the public felt duped. Leslie Sun, the Times editor responsible for overseeing the event, became the target of growing online criticism. Her vision of Blake as a symbol of modern womanhood crashed headfirst into reality. The internet wasn't buying the glossy narrative. Once people learned, the summit appearance was allegedly a trade-off for list placement. Blake's entire speech and presence were reinterpreted as transactional. Her tribute to her mother was now seen as part of a carefully orchestrated act. Ryan's awkward stage performance was viewed as the cost of keeping his wife relevant. TikTok commentators, Twitter threads, and even legacy outlets began calling it the most transparent PR scam of the year. The fallout hit fast. Time's credibility took a serious hit, and the so-called honor meant to uplift Blake only intensified scrutiny around her past scandals. Meanwhile, Ryan's brand was caught in the middle of it all. His once flawless image as Hollywood's charming guy became tangled in whispers of manipulation and compliance. By standing next to Blake, he wasn't seen as supportive. He was seen as complicit. For many, the summit wasn't just a flop, it was a public surrender. Worse yet, rumors began to circulate that Blake and Ryan's PR teams were heated behind the scenes, each side blaming the other for the collapse in public opinion. Even longtime team members were reportedly exiting, unwilling to continue defending what had become an unfixable narrative. Blake Lively set out to redefine her legacy, but instead, she set fire to it all. What was meant to be a moment of empowerment turned into a cautionary tale about performative activism, failed PR stunts, and the limits of celebrity branding. From the awkward red carpet poses to the unraveling of once loyal allies, the public watched as her perfect image collapsed in real time. And while Ryan Reynolds tried to hold it together, his silence and strained appearances only made matters worse. The Time 100 Gala was supposed to cement Blake's influence, but all it really did was expose the shallowness of the industry, and Blake's downfall is now etched into the people's memories. This whole scandal was a turning point, and the stars once known as the industry's golden couple, there may be no turning back.